We've got a couple more sequences to look at just here. Driving shots are particularly challenging for any number of reasons. And what we see just here is how you have to cheat with driving shots quite a lot to make them work. So the sun would appear to be coming in from this side, and you can see something playing on Samuel L. Jackson's hand there, and you can see it in the background as well, playing on the top of that van. It does definitely feel like that's the direction that the sun in real life is coming in. And we can see a bit in the back just here. They wouldn't have gone to the trouble of sticking a light outside to do that if they're on a process trailer or something. There's no way. So I take that as that's the direction that the sun is definitely coming from. Now let's take a look at Vincent. He has a catchlight in his eyes. Surprise, surprise. And because he has a catchlight in his eyes, we know that has to be fake. And that is going to be an HMI. And that's going to be coming from this direction just here. Bang, straight into his eyeball. The way this would work is you'd have the car on a process trailer and that would have HMIs rigged to it. So he's basically got just a big HMI booking straight at his face. Can't be that comfortable. And if we look at the other things that are going on here as well, you have these other tells that will show you where that light's coming from. So for example, if we look at his earring, we see we've got the shadowing out of his ear just here. We've got really hard light catching. So we've got a shadow cast. All this light down here, and then we've got shadowing just here. That light is just blasting onto him hard. And this side of his face is just flat. This is the worst example of just flat, horrible light across someone's face that you're going to find. I mean, the reason this is bad is it just makes the side of his face look like a big sea of skin. And it's all kind of the same tone, and it doesn't have any shape, and he doesn't have any definition or jawline or any of that. It's just a big sea of skin. When we go to the next shot, you'll see how this can be shaped. I'm not saying the next shot is perfect, but it's a massive difference. Now, if you look at Samuel L. Jackson here, he's not doing too bad. He's got this light coming in, and again, I think he's being blasted by an HMI. I don't think this is actually the sun doing it. He's being blasted by another HMI, I think, which is coming from that direction, and he's got the catchlight in his eyes as well. But at least we have the shadowing going this way for him. So it means this side of his face is a little bit further down. It might be because he's turning his head, but that's got more shape to it. He's definitely got the better light out of the two. So jumping to the next frame, things change dramatically. Now, the reason that in a car scene like this you need to bring in HMIs is because you're competing with daylight outside. Unless you're doing this on a green screen in a studio, you're competing with some really hefty levels. And in order to do that, you've got to get the whole process trailer thing, and you need those big lights on there in order to get light into the car. Because cars are comparatively dark spaces. You know, they're flagging off all of the top light, we've got relatively small windows, and you're constantly moving, so light's going to be shifting, and we need a lot of the time just a nice consistent light to be able to get level, to be able to work with the talent and allow them to do multiple takes and all that good stuff. The downside of this is that for this shot, it's later in the day, I reckon, and the ambient level outside looks like it's dropped right down. So now we have this zingy, bright light hitting John Travolta. And bearing in mind what we saw before, I mean, he was getting flat light on the other side, so it would seem to play that he would get a more defined light on this side, but it's too much. Look at all of this. He's got this crazy, and I admit that the frame grab here isn't perfect, but you'll get the idea. He's got this crazy bright catchlight in his eyes. Outside, we can see that the sky is going down in level. We've got horrible catchlights on his nose, on his skin, on his teeth, on his lips. They're just too much. Got this shadowing around here. All of this is being picked out. We've got a bit of sweat on his forehead. And then this side of his face, I'll give them that. There's a little bit of shadow density there, which is nice to see, but this is horrible. And compared to the previous shot, it doesn't sit. If we jump back and forth, take all of this off. We see those two, they are not in the same world. That doesn't suddenly cut to that. Even if you're saying they're driving along and things are changing a bit, that's not good. Let's look at Samuel L. Jackson, because he is getting a better deal here. We still have a couple of things to call out with it. Like, for example, his nose shadow is really harsh. Light is coming in like this, so we are getting that No shadow just there, cast out. And it looks almost like a double shadow. I can't quite tell. That might make sense if he's getting just a normal amount of sky ambience, if the sun is coming in from that direction, that there would be a double shadow there. And in fact, you can actually see two catch lights in his eyes just there. So the fact that he has a double shadow there would probably make sense. Now, there's something else. It does look like the real sunlight is coming in from this direction here and catching on his shoulder. Again, I don't think they would have put a light out there to do that. I think that is just where the natural light's coming in. And the quality of the light in these shots is very hard. It seems just like a bare HMI, or maybe an HMI just with a little bit of gel over the front of the Fresnel lens, but nothing like big diffusion. Big diffusion would be hard to use in this scenario, and I can't see them using it. Nowadays, people tend to go with something like a sky panel because it's a big source, you still get quite a lot of level out of it, and it's easy to rig, and you're not using frames or anything like that, which would be a problem for wind and rigging if you're on a process trailer. So this is just hard and harsh, and I don't like it. It's also the color quality of the light doesn't match the surroundings every time, so it feels like we're getting a little bit more blue magenta in the mix with these. This shot's cool. I reckon it is pretty much what's going on. Maybe they had a little bit of bounce or a little light. Bearing in mind this is the early 90s, I can't see them having many little lights in there, but you might get some kind of keener flow in there perhaps, but I kind of doubt it. It's probably just a little bounce, but they are getting some hard shadowing. I accept that. It's fine. It's what the sun's doing. We can see in the background this is all happening and it's real, so we got all of that shadowing on the building there, and that's consistent with what's falling on them. We got great blue sky, so that's all good. If there is a little bit of bounce coming back up, so we fill in underneath just here, I can see that's a possibility because that would be really dark compared to the sky, but I couldn't say what that's actually going to be. Right, this sequence walking into the apartment has a lot of problems for me. To start with, we have some very clear references of where the sun actually is going to be in these shots. So I'll do this in red. Here, we are getting shadowing like this. And we can see the shadow just here as well from the building. And we can see the shadowing in the back just there. We can see everything here is being hit with pretty much direct sunlight. So we know where the light is. They're in shadow. There's probably a bounce or something going on just to pick them out, although the background is really hot, so maybe they are just letting it play. It's on film after all. But as we step through, we start to see some weirdness in the background. I think they are being lit with an HMI just here because they are far brighter than they were a moment ago. They've stepped into a light at this point. And that's playing down the side of their face, and you can see, look at his ear and his earring. That's always the tell just here. It's harder to see with hair because hair tends to give a less well-defined shadow. We see the HMI light just beating down onto the sides of their faces, and we're giving flat light to camera. Don't know, hate it. And it's the same on Samuel L. Jackson's character as well. Further into the background, we can see some of the weirdness. This, maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that is a car windscreen bouncing light up just there. But I feel like perhaps that's a badly placed HMI just booking in just here. I don't know why they would have done it. Okay, perhaps that's a car windscreen, but we're going to see more. Right here. Now the sun is not coming from this direction, so that could, again, give you the benefit of the doubt. All of this down here could be being done by a window being hit by sunlight. I have indeed made a little video about that when I was in LA, where we had light bouncing off a building and giving us a cool little backlight. It does happen, but it doesn't feel like that just here. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt one more time on this, but they are definitely still catching some HMI light. Look at the shadows. We've still got flat light to face. They look a little bit too bluey pink on the side of their faces. It isn't rich and warm like the sunlight feels like it should be on a hot day like this. It feels too cool and blue. I'm not buying it. And there. I will give them the others, but they can't have this. This is definitely a light. And you can tell because the shadow of this tree comes down like this. Boom, 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 boom. And in the center, call it the center, of the shadow just here, it's really bright. It's bright and it's blue. Look how blue it is. And then it falls off. And we catch a little bit over here too. And we're catching some on their faces just here. And we've got all of that going on down the side of their face. Now this has to be a big light just boosting to everything. I can see why they've done it. They needed some level on the characters, and they didn't want the background just to be dark, but I feel like there are other better ways of approaching that. It's an incidental shot, they probably don't have much time, but this is where as a cinematographer you've got to look at these things and decide how you can make these work, and this doesn't work, this just looks fake. In fact, what's interesting is I was talking to my wife about this, and we actually watched Pulp Fiction again recently, and she, watching the scene, when I just showed her this clip, thought that it was at night. So it feels like something that has been lit on purpose to look a certain way, but it doesn't look like natural daylight. So although she was unaware of perhaps what the cheat was and the context of the scene, she could tell that it wasn't real, that there was something else going on. And when you look at some of the scenes later in the film, you get a very similar treatment for when Vincent's bringing Mia Wallace back after all the chaos to her house. It's lit in a very similar way to this, and the ratios are kind of similar, a little bit further down, but not much. So when you're kind of mixing your metaphors with what's daylight and what's nighttime, and what's natural light and what's not, it starts to fall apart, and this doesn't work for me.